It didn't begin with flashing cameras or a red carpet moment. It began in silence, inside a courtroom, where Rebel Wilson found herself answering questions that could reshape her entire public image. No script, no punchlines, no second takes. Just a legal battle where every word mattered more than ever before. And sitting at the center of it all was a claim that sounds simple on the surface, but is anything but in reality, defamation. Because when someone accuses you of damaging their reputation, it's no longer about opinions. It's about proof. The case was brought forward by Charlotte MacInnes, who claims that statements Rebel made publicly crossed a line and caused real harm to her career. But here's where things immediately get complicated. In defamation law, it's not enough to say something hurt your reputation. The court looks for specific elements. Was the statement presented as a fact? Was it false? And did it lead to measurable damage? These aren't casual questions. They're the foundation of the entire case. If Charlotte can prove all three, the situation becomes serious for Rebel. But if even one of those elements fails, the claim could fall apart entirely. And that's what makes this so unpredictable. Because to understand whether those elements are met, you have to go back to where everything started. On the set of The Deb. What should have been just another film project slowly turned into something far more tense behind the scenes. A key figure in this story is Amanda Ghost, a producer connected to the film, and someone whose name keeps surfacing as the situation unfolds. According to claims discussed during the case, Charlotte allegedly experienced something that made her uncomfortable. Rebel later described hearing about it and feeling shocked, interpreting it as something serious enough to speak about. At that moment, Rebel believed she was reacting to something important, something that shouldn't be ignored. But here's where the situation shifts in a way that changes everything legally. It's been said that Charlotte later stepped back from those concerns. Whether that decision was influenced by career pressures, personal reconsideration, or something else entirely isn't fully clear. But in a courtroom, clarity matters. Because if Rebel publicly shared a version of events that doesn't align with what Charlotte ultimately stood by, the question becomes unavoidable. Was the statement accurate or not? And that's the turning point. Because once Rebel took those concerns and expressed them publicly, the situation crossed from private interpretation into legal exposure. Social media posts, interviews, or even indirect statements can all count as publication under defamation law. And once something is published, it can be examined, challenged, and judged in a completely different way. Rebel has maintained that her statements were truthful. And legally, that's her strongest position. Truth isn't just a defense in defamation cases, it's often the deciding factor. If she can prove that what she said was substantially true, the case against her could collapse almost immediately. But proving truth in a situation built on conversations, interpretations, and shifting accounts isn't always straightforward. On the other side, Charlotte's argument focuses on harm. Not hypothetical harm, but real, measurable consequences. In legal terms, this could mean lost roles, reduced opportunities, or damage to professional relationships. It could even extend to how she is perceived publicly within the industry. And here's the challenge, linking that harm directly to Rebel's statements. Because if the damage can't be clearly connected, the claim becomes much harder to sustain. And that's where the courtroom becomes critical. When Rebel took the stand, the questions weren't just about what happened. They were about how she interpreted what happened, why she chose to speak publicly, and whether she considered the potential impact of her words. At one point, she was asked if she believed she had ever mistreated another woman. Her answer was direct. She said she had not. She also rejected accusations of bullying, calling them completely untrue and emphasizing that no similar complaints had surfaced throughout her career. But here's the thing about legal cases. Personal conviction doesn't decide the outcome. Evidence does. The court isn't there to determine who seems more genuine. It's there to determine whether the legal definition of defamation has been met. And that requires more than confidence. It requires proof. The court isn't there to determine who seems more genuine. It's there to determine whether the legal definition of defamation has been met. And that requires more than confidence. It requires proof. Another key factor being examined is intent. Did Rebel knowingly make a false statement? Or was she speaking based on what she genuinely believed at the time? This distinction is subtle, but incredibly important. In many cases, if someone shares information believing it to be true without reckless disregard for accuracy, it can provide a layer of legal protection. But if it's shown that they ignored conflicting information or failed to verify key details, the situation becomes far more serious. And proving intent isn't simple. It often relies on patterns, communications, and context that aren't always visible to the public, which is why cases like this rarely feel straightforward. Adding another layer to the situation is the broader legal conflict surrounding the Deb. Before this case even reached its current stage, there were already disputes involving producers connected to the film, including Amanda Ghost. Reports suggest disagreements over the film's release and control, raising questions about whether the tensions between individuals were part of a larger issue. When multiple legal disputes connect to the same project, it creates a web of narratives that can be difficult to untangle. And then there's the outcome, because no matter how complex the story becomes, the legal system eventually forces a resolution. If Charlotte succeeds in proving her claim, the court could award damages based on the harm established. These damages could vary depending on the scale of impact and the evidence presented. There may also be requirements for public corrections or retractions, which can carry significant weight in cases involving reputation. If Rebel successfully defends her statements by proving they were true or didn't meet the threshold for defamation, the case could be dismissed entirely. And then there's the possibility that the public never gets a clear answer. Settlement remains a very real outcome. In that scenario, both parties agree to resolve the dispute privately, often without admitting fault. It avoids a final judgment but leaves many questions unanswered, and sometimes those unanswered questions are what keep the story alive. Because beyond the legal arguments, there's a broader conversation happening about how quickly information spreads, about how reputations can shift in a matter of hours, and about how the line between speaking out and causing harm isn't always clear. There's been a lot of speculation surrounding this case, with people forming opinions based on limited information. Some believe Rebel was acting on what she believed to be true. Others think the situation may have been misinterpreted or taken too far. But speculation, no matter how widespread, doesn't determine legal outcomes. Only evidence does. And until every piece of that evidence is examined, tested, and challenged in court, the full story remains out of reach. That's what makes this case so compelling and so difficult to predict, because it's not just about what happened, it's about what can be proven to have happened. And those two things aren't always the same. So as this unfolds, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just another headline. It's a reminder of how powerful words can be, how fragile reputations are, and how complex the truth becomes when it's filtered through different perspectives. And now it comes down to this. When the legal process finally runs its course, will it confirm what people already believe or reveal something no one saw coming? If you followed this far, you already know this story is deeper than it looks. So what do you think? Based on everything we know, the claims, the defenses, and the legal standards, who has the stronger case right now? Share your thoughts below. And if you want more breakdowns that go beyond surface-level drama and actually explain what's happening behind the scenes, stick around, because the biggest stories aren't just about what's said, they're about what can be proven.